Now, did you now did you write your book while you were recovering from cancer, or is this a completely different
Oh,
time?
well, thanks for bringing that one in, Skit. In 2008 or nine, again, I'm missing my dates there. I started doing some writing,
Okay.
and I mean, I've always been a writer. I loved writing as a kid, but I went through a rather nasty relationship, and so I wrote this short story. It was very claustrophobic because about a man who stowed away on a spaceship, and his only hope was to go to this prison world and rescue his partner, but he had no clue how to do it. And the whole story was basically a claustrophobic description of how he was stuck in the spaceship and how he was going to survive and what he was going to do when he got to the other end and so forth. And there was no meant to be any ending to it. So I wrote this story and I thought, well, I'll just set it aside. And then life happens, and I ended up getting married. And for 6 years, there was no opportunity for me to write. And after that ended, um, and then some brief time, I think it was, yeah, about 2018. This is before I got the cancer. I
Okay.
was already looking at it and branching it out into something else. And so through the cancer, kind of held off writing a bit, but then through COVID was an amazing point because at that point I was able to finish the whole thing, and I ended up with 62 chapters, 125,000 odd words, and then went through the process of preparing for publication. I had to go through edits and all that sort of thing, and um, for me, I think I have to thank COVID to some extent because during COVID, I spent most of my time editing, working with my publisher, getting things in shape, and then actually publishing it last year in 2023. So,
Well, what made you choose? What because you chose, I believe, sci-fi, right? Did you
oh,
love sci-fi growing up? Was that a big thing? Like, did you watch Star Trek and stuff
oh,
like that?
oh my God. I'm glad you asked that question. As a gay kid, I loved all science fiction. The reason being, I think, is that it provided a place to hide, a place to dream about other things. So I was much more happy if I were flying off warp speed in Star Trek or Lost in Space or Doctor Who or whatever and reading science fiction. I mean, just one book after the other was because it was a way of surviving what was going on in my real life. It was easier to live in science fiction than the real life. And so, I mean, I've carried sci-fi into my adult life. It's always been a major part of my enjoyment. And so it just seemed natural to take that story about the man on the spaceship and turn it into an entire novel. And to this day, I'm still amazed at how it worked out. I really
So
am.
now, what made you decide to do a sci-fi gay romance novel? What made you do that? What gave you that idea that that would be um, something that would be good? And were you worried about acceptance concerning a sci-fi book like that with a gay
I
romance?
I love that question because um, throughout most of my life, as I read science fiction or watched shows, there were no representation of my community in them in general. I mean, I picked up one novel in the late 80s that turned out to have two bisexual men in it, which was just absolutely amazing. I was just floored. But the rest of the time, all the characters were predominantly straight, or were all straight, and predominantly white. Okay. So in around and please correct you know I might get the date wrong, but the first year that Doctor Who did a reboot, they had a character on there called Captain Jack Harkness, and I was just like, yes, finally. He was coined as bisexual, but he loved the guys, and it was shown like right there. And I said, you know what? We need more representation. Not that we need to take over or anything. It was just it would be nice to see more gay characters. And so I said, you know what? I'm not going to wait. I'm going to take that short story and I'm going to write it myself. I'm going to write a sci-fi myself. So that was the underlying reason why I chose sci-fi, because that's the genre I love. But I also said, I'm going to write a story that has a gay focus in it.
Are you surprised by the fact that more and more things are being represented in that type of arena, whether it be television shows or movies? Are you surprised to see that, or were you expecting eventually the way life and society was heading that it was going to happen eventually? Did
I
you feel that
I,
way?
I believe that. I mean, when we watch the average TV show or movies, there's more representation of more minorities. Um, the, the number of African Americans in movies is up and more representative. Asian actors, gay and lesbian actors, trans actors, and all that. It's becoming more prevalent because it's becoming more mainstream. And I know that there's a bit of pushback with that. I was reading something on Facebook today about, why are these small interest groups pushing to be more representative? And it's not like, as a gay man, I have an agenda to take over science fiction and it's going to be all gay or anything, or that I have an agenda. It's just representation,
Yeah.
you know? You know, up until more than recently, if you had a gay character in a movie or a TV show or something, they were either going to die of AIDS, or they were the leading lady's best friend, or they were all a stereotype. And now, in a lot of these TV shows here in Canada and in the States, and that there are representation of, here's just a normal gay guy who is a doctor, for example, but it's not the fact that he's gay, he's a doctor, but just happens to be gay. And I think that now we're seeing more people in real life situations. There's a doctor who just happens to be gay, or a fireman that's a lesbian who has a wife, for example. Whereas back then, I mean, yeah, you saw Julia Roberts and you saw the guy dying of AIDS, or all that horrible stuff that sometimes actually occurred, I guess. And now, excuse me, you're seeing more representation in just normal life. And I think that's really what I think as a gay man, that's all I really wanted to see, was just someone who represents me, and I could see myself in that show, in that book, in that movie. And that just makes everything so much better for me.
What did you think about the movie Philadelphia? Was that an accurate portrayal of a situation like that happening, in your opinion?
I think it was. I mean, hats off to the actors in that.
Tom Hanks and Antonio Banderas, I call it.
Yeah, that's right. I cried. I cried and cried. You know what? It was treated very sensitively and appropriately. It wasn't in your face. It wasn't.
And realistically.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the person said it. They had a person say, well, you don't put the guy, because if I remember correctly, you don't put the worst guy on the best. You put the best guy on the best case. Because he was a lawyer, right? I think in that movie, was he a lawyer?
Been a while, but something like that. Yeah.
I thought it was a lawyer, because basically the person said, well, you're not going to put the worst guy on the best thing or most important thing. You're going to put the best guy on the most important thing. And I thought what caused it to happen was Tom Hanks' character was at the hospital on the phone, and he was scratching the back of his head. He had a lesion, because HIV, you had lesions, right, or no?
That's the Kaposi sarcoma I mentioned earlier. The skin cancer. So yeah.
That was a good movie. I remember seeing it when I was younger. It was a good movie. It's unfortunate that that would happen back then, but it doesn't happen. I thought it would happen now, but it's possible because the way people are. Right. But back to your book. Why are these characters so important to you? Like when you were writing them and coming up with who they are, what made each character stand out for you and make them important to you?
The main character, Tam, he has a lot of elements in me. He's a person who is a reluctant hero. He's forced into a situation where he has to become a hero, and he doesn't really want to. His partner, his Lifeline, is a happy-go-lucky, free, say what you will, do what you want sort of thing, and he gets into trouble for that. And they live in a world where, and this is like almost a million years into the future, that gay men are again discriminated against because in the book, you don't understand why at the beginning. It's just that they are considered degenerates. And so Tam's partner, Brogan, does something inappropriate, gets arrested, and they discover that he's gay. They throw him on the prison world, and then Tam is forced to get onto that spaceship I mentioned and find a way to rescue him. And so Tam is kind of an extension of me to some extent, and Brogan is kind of a part of me. It's almost like I'm combining myself into the two of them. But by the way, I'd like to point out that Tam, for some reason, I wrote him as a black character. Tam is black. I checked with all my African American and African Canadian friends saying, is it okay if I write the main character being black? And they said, hell yes, we need representation in science fiction as much as gay people do. So I couldn't tell you, Skip, why, but it just seemed right at the time. And so there's also a swashbuckling space pirate, massive guy. I think he's kind of the fun-loving part of me, or something that I wish I could be. There's a woman who is actually a siren, and now a siren is someone who, in mythology, sings to dash the people's boats on the rocks and kill them, right? But the sirens in my story are the ones that unify these people, the gay men, into lifelines where they're linked together, physically, emotionally, not physically. What one feels, the other feels. So she is kind of fashioned after a drag queen. She's flamboyant. She has blue dresses, and she shows off, and she's got smarty little comments that come out. And I thought, oh, I love this character because she's exactly what I'm not. I'm a rather quiet, reserved, shy kind of guy, but she is kind of like what I would like to be sometimes. So
okay. So there's all parts of you, and then what you kind of wish you were more like, basically. Like there's a bunch of characters like you. Each like personality quirk. Would that be it, or no? That's not quirk. No.
Yeah, hey, trust me, I got my own quirks and things like that. I mean, the reluctant hero part, that's me. The sense of what's right and wrong, that's me. The fear of the unknown, that's me. So there's lots of aspects of it that really are me. So when you ask me why are they important, it's because it's not the fact that they're gay. It's the fact that they are fighting a universal fight that everybody in one way or another has had to fight. And that's the fight to be for survival and the right to be who they are. And so that's why the novel for me is so important in that aspect.
So what made you decide on the name? What made you think of that name for the title?
This is kind of funny. The original story had Ted and Steve or something like that. I had no idea who they were and everything. But as I did my outline for the novel, I started branching out and thinking, I got to flesh out each of these characters and decide what their personalities are and so forth. And I couldn't find any names. So I started going on the internet and I started looking up Gaelic names. So a lot of the names in my novel are of Gaelic descent. So Tam comes from a longer name. Brogan comes from Gaelic as well. So there's quite a few of them that are Gaelic. So and then I just took, okay, well, let's do a few Gaelic ones, and I pulled a few German ones and so forth, and a few Scandinavian ones and things like that. So it just gave it a bit more of a flavor. So,
so it's good. Now, this is going to be the start of a series, right? You're going to be doing more books. How many books altogether do you hope to write or expecting to have in this series?
Right now, I'm looking at 3. The first book is Tam's voyage of rescuing Brogan and all the characters that he meets to do this, but then finding out that his rescue and Brogan's rescue is part of a bigger picture. And it has to do with the title Origins, because the people in this novel do not know where they came from. Humanity spread out through 3 galaxies and then conveniently forgot where they came from. And so they have no idea where their origins are. And it turns out that maybe Tam and Brogan would be a key or pivotal in discovering where origins are. And so there's the story of the rescue, but there's also the origin, where did we come from, is the big overlying story that's in this. And then in the second one, a lot of the main characters in the first, I don't want to give the first one way too much, but there are characters from the first novel that are thrown in the middle of a war between three regimes. And they have to face dealing with these three different regimes who are at war with each other. But what they need in that story is also what the three regimes were. So they have to try to work with all three. And so the whole second novel is about all these different cultures clashing with each other and not understanding each other, but they're all trying to work towards the main thing, but they want it for themselves, but don't want to share it. And that puts the characters from the first novel in the middle. And so,
Okay.
yeah.
So you said there's going to be three all together. That now is the second one almost done? Are you writing it still? Is it in the process or?
The draft has been written, and I'm currently finishing off the developmental edit. This is where the edit says, changes. Here's what we need to do. Here are the inconsistencies. I'm working through that. Then I'll go through a content edit, and then a proofread. And then we start getting an ISBN number for it, and we get the cover artwork done and all that stuff, and then it's officially published. So,
do you have on your website? I thought I saw when I was researching. Do you have character pictures of everyone on your site? Because I thought I noticed something like that.
Yes, there is. I started playing with AI, and I started putting in some key features about what I thought they looked like, and I eventually got something that, in my mind, that's what they looked like. So yeah, I was playing with AI and came up with those pictures. And I've done little book teasers and little videos about it, and what if and all that stuff. So yes, yeah.
That's good. It sounds like you've been enjoying writing and coming up with the characters and stuff like that.
I am. It's one of the things that I know that I can continue on now that I'm retired. I mean, a lot of people, when they retire, my father drove my mother crazy when he retired. Me, I live on my own. I'm single, and I know that my writing is there for me. So I might not be teaching anymore, but the writing is definitely there. And so I get passionate when I talk about writing, and I'm passionate when I'm writing. And so,
do you miss teaching?
Well, having only retired, will I miss teaching? Yes and no. I might do some substituting in the future just to get a little extra income and things like that. But no, I think after 30 years, it was my time, and pass the baton to somebody else. So no, I don't think I'll miss it.
Seems like you're going to be enjoying your retirement, writing, and are you hoping that this could be a trilogy and do another trilogy like that type of thing, or is it this just three and you're going to call it a?
I really appreciate your question, Skit. I mean, okay, we've got Lifeline Origins, which is the first. The second one is currently entitled Lifeline Diversions. The third one, I have no idea what its title is and how it's going to flesh it out. I've planned number 1 and 2 out to in minute detail. The third one is just sort of a rough outline. So my hope is that it'll be a trilogy, but you never know. It could end up like... The other thing I've been thinking about doing is writing my story. And
about your own life and what you've been through?
Yeah, I'm doing sort of a autobiography one, but maybe written as a fictional character. I haven't quite worked out the details, but I mean, I've been through so many things in my life that I think people would want to read it. So that's
I mean, it would be teaching. I mean, look at all the stuff that we talked about here that people are going to see. So you've been through a lot, seen a lot. So even the stuff that we didn't talk about, you could go more deep into it from a perspective and really talk about it. So it might help you, in general, writing stuff out about your life and letting things, you know what I mean? That might help many different ways.
I think so because, during COVID, I had so much time on my hands that I did some inner work. And in that inner work, I came to understand that you have to, as RuPaul says on Drag Race, that you have to love yourself first before you love someone else, right? And I don't think through the HIV situation and the cancer stuff that I really truly loved myself. And so I've done a lot of inner work. I've learned not to be codependent in my relationships. I've learned to live life and have fun and do all the things that I didn't do because I thought I was going to die of HIV, right?
So there were a lot of things you stopped because of HIV. Did you notice that happening a lot with people?
You know what? I can only speak for myself. For me, it was something that I just didn't think about. And, as a retiree, I plan on traveling a lot because I never really did a lot of traveling because I was too focused on just surviving. So, so I've been thinking about that, doing my story, whether it be actual about me or do a fictional character who lives all these things. I've been thinking of doing some young adult writing. It's a big thing right now, and my librarian at school said, Grant, we could use more stories about your community for young adults, and it could be science fiction, as a matter of fact. So, I'm toying with that. I've been thinking about some children's books, picture books and things like that. So, there's a ton of things I could be doing as well writing. So,
So writing's always been a passion of yours then?
yes, as soon as I picked up a pencil or a pen from day one, and they were always like out there stories. So I've been writing all my life, and as you get into an adult, you tend to write less. But I've written poetry, I've written short scripts for videos that never came about, but are just sitting there waiting. So yeah,
why not put them to use?
Well, that's the thing.
See what happens.
Yeah, exactly. So now that I'm retired, I've got the time to start looking at some of these things. And I think that's one of the things that makes it fun for me is that I can set aside the teaching and now work through all this stuff that I didn't do while I was working because of what's going on in my life. So,
yeah. Well, time eventually people have time eventually.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, a lot of my friends said, well, aren't you worried about being bored? And I said, absolutely not. I can keep myself so busy that it's almost like I didn't retire.
Well, so you've probably been thinking about doing this for years, so you've been doing everything else. So since this has been pushed back for so long, now that you're able to do it, you don't have to, you don't have to work and then go back, try to write, and then do this. You just relax and just write and enjoy it.
Yeah, and I'm young enough to do all the things I want to do. I'm 61 this year. I'll be 62 in December, but I'm retiring now so that I can travel, do the things that I want to do. So that's going to be my main goal.
Yeah, it sounds like a good goal.
Yeah,
sounds like a really, really good goal, and it seems like you're enjoying it. So that's very, very good.
Yeah, I have to say I've really appreciated this conversation. It's I know we always have questions, a script of how we're going to do it, but everything that we talked about today, it was just the way it was meant to be, and I really thank you for allowing me on to do this.
That's no problem. Like I said before, I don't know if I said it to you or somebody else that you talk about different things, you find things out, and sometimes you talk about stuff, you learn stuff, and different people have different people have different lives. So when they were born at a different time, they went through different things, and you can learn a lot.
Exactly.
And when you find out different things, because for instance, with you being gay and dealing with AIDS, I wasn't an adult at that time that knew someone that was gay dealing with it, so I didn't actually see it. I saw old videos and I heard stories and how it was, but there's a difference between seeing something on television or old footage and actually seeing someone go through something like HIV. So that's why it's important and good to talk and have long conversations about all sorts of stuff. Unfortunately, with the way things are now, it's people don't talk as much as they used to. So
no, agreed. I agree.
So, well, right.
Just for your listeners, if they want to know more about my book and myself, it's a really easy address to find on the internet is www.grantedwardmiller.ca, and the CA represents Canada. So check it out there. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. So if you go to the website, you can find information where you can buy it in hardcover, softcover, digital form, ebooks, Apple, all that stuff. And there's one thing I want to plug. I want to address my straight science fiction lovers. I challenge them to pick up a book like mine, even though some of the characters are gay. They will find that the things that are in my story are universal. It doesn't really matter what their orientation is. It's the story itself and how humanity has to go through what they have to go through. So
Yeah, it sounds like it's a good story, it sounds like it'll be enjoyable by reading it, and it seems like you're putting a lot into it. It seems like you're having a trilogy that sounds really good, just based on the story, not even
mhm.
what orientation or anything, just based on the story itself and what's happening is interesting. So even if people the orientation thing, but the
Yeah.
story itself, it sounds very, very good.
Yeah. Well, it started off with a bucket list of make sure you do a novel before you croak. Well, I did that, and now I'm motivated to continue it. So
Yeah, and all right. So the book is called. I have to give reference to the name of the book. I'm not sure.
it's Lifeline Origins. Okay. And yeah,
Where can you buy it? Is it only on your website or is it on Amazon?
you can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Nobles. You can get it chapters up here in Canada. You can get it on Kindle, um, Kobo, Nook, Google Play. It's available everywhere. So,
Is it only by mail, by shipping, or is it by you can go and physically get it too?
well, that's the tough part about being a self-published author. I mean, I don't know whether Barnes and Nobles carries it in the store or not, but they would definitely order it for you. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So you go to the websites, you order it, or you go to the store, they would order it for you.
Yep. So if you just remember Lifeline Origins, they'll find it. It's everywhere. And www.grantedwardmiller.ca will help you too.
All right, Grant, it's been great to have you on. I'm very appreciative of you sharing your story, and and coming on and talking about stuff that's very difficult, given what the content was with
Yeah.
you talking about homophobia, what you went through when you were younger, and having HIV, and how tough that was, and the cancer, and sharing your story about writing your book and why you wrote it. I really do appreciate you coming on and explaining all that, and letting viewers and listeners know about it.
Well, thank you for taking a risk. I know it's hard to know just exactly what's going to come out of these things, but I really appreciate the opportunity.
That's no problem. And thanks again for coming on. I really much appreciate it.
Cheers.